Hello everyone. It's an excellent conference so far. I'm glad I took a 1-hour trip to get here. For those who don't know me, I am George. I am a member of the developers team of ArduPilot, and I have my own consultancy, Controlled Ascent, doing ArduPilot related development features, etc. And today I want to continue last year's. I'm trying to make it a sort of tradition to talk about TECs and other controllers of ArduPilot. And it's not going to be as math heavy as last year. I wanted to keep improving my and everyone else's understanding of the TECs controller. It's the controller that regulates for our airplane side of ArduPilot the altitude and airspeed. And Paul had laid all the foundation, Paul Riseborough, all the foundation and all of the features for this, but we need people to maintain constant knowledge of our controllers, and I'm trying to get to that place. And it's also for personal motives, because we often get questions about tuning the TECs controller that I don't know how to answer well. So I thought this year, let's try to improve this situation a bit. And I organized sort of not an experiment, but an exploration. And in the first part, I'll try to explain what I did. So I wanted to see what each of the main TECs parameters, how it affects the performance of an aircraft. I didn't really have time to do this in a real aircraft, so I said, okay, I know how to do a simulation, let's do that. So first thing would be to construct a repeatable TECs mission to highlight all of the important features, then build a parameter sampling system, then decide which parameters I wanted to scan, because as you all know, we have a lot of parameters, extract some metrics and analyze the results. So starting with a simple mission, I created an auto test. We run thousands of auto tests every day in our CI suite. So I said, okay, let's make an auto test. It's simple enough. It's the quickest way to run the same mission and again and again. And this is just a straight line with altitude changes. This is definition of continuous waypoints that gets you through a mission whose altitude profile looks sort of like this. You have a very small, actually I have a mouse, I should have a mouse for this. Maybe I can do it with a mouse, let's see. Apparently not, okay. A small step altitude up, a small descent, and then a continuous climb at maximum climb rate, and then a continuous descent at maximum sink rate. That's the mission every run from now on that you'll see is going through. That auto test is available at the branch, so it's accessible code. Yes, Thomas?
What's the missing bit?
It's so each color is an active waypoint, and there is a blank between the climb and the descent, because I interjected another section, another waypoint, to let the altitude stabilize before I started the descent. Otherwise, the climb dynamics would affect the descent onset. Yeah. And this autotest loads each time a custom parameter file. Which parameter file basically controls which parameter I would tweak and set into a new value every time. So how do I sample those parameters then? I wrote a few custom Python files which basically allow me to define sample cases. For example, this is one sample case where I want to sweep text time constant parameter from the value 1 to value 10 with 10 samples in between. And I want also to repeat this for these values of the pitch to servo time constant. So basically, as many lists are put into every sampling case, the external product of those values is going to be run. So this sample ends up being 10 times 6, 60 times this mission. Each mission, for recoverability purposes, gets a unique name which starts with a primary parameter and its value that is being swept, and also a hash, which basically corresponds to the exact different custom parameters that were run. So if we know which parameters we want to run and sample, we can find out if we have already run this mission and recover it for analysis purposes. Yep. So these were more or less the parameters I swept, most of the TECs and a few ones on the pitch control. It's more than 260 runs, close to 300 now. The total size is 2 gigabytes. It's not that much. All of these can be simulated within 10, 15 minutes, depending on your machine, and can be analyzed even faster, I think. And the analysis is, again, through a Python files, through normal PyMavlink tools. The DF reader, the data flash reader library that we have is plenty. It's reasonably quick, but I still, because I iterated a lot and added and said, okay, let's add one more sample case and one more sample case, I also set it to scan on only the new files. I also have a last file.txt with a timestamp, after which it knows, okay, these files are new, I need to go through them. And because of the way the data flash parser works, we can only isolate and log and read only the topics, the messages that are of interest for our analysis. So the script goes through the log, and extracts some metrics. I'll let you know which in a minute, and stores those values into a database. Whenever I have a personal project, tiny one, experimental one, that needs a database, I go to TinyDB. It's a Python library that gives you a database-like API through a local file, a JSON file, which is great because it's human readable and human editable. So it's great for experimentation. And in this case, you can see that, for example, for this log name, for the climb section of the log, I had this metric with this value, this metric with a null value, etc., which is really easy to test and inspect if what comes out makes sense. And finally, it's a third script that does the analysis. And for every log, it plots me a grid of plots that on the x-axis has the parameter under sweep, and on the y-axis, each metric that I want to see how it behaved. And let's see what each of these metrics are. The top two rows are about oscillations. So ideally, you don't want to see data points there. If there's no data point, it means there is no oscillation. The first column is about airspeed oscillation, frequency and amplitude. The center column is about altitude oscillation. And the third one is about the pitch reference command that TECs generates. And the lower side is for airspeed overshoot and undershoot, separately set. I think it makes a lot of sense. In the center, altitude rise time and altitude overshoot in %. And the last one I tagged later, which is the error on the climb rate, because we often have questions about why doesn't my plane climb as fast as I have set it and I know it can. So this is an interesting one too. A note about the oscillations and how they are recorded. It's a fast Fourier transform through that section of the log. So you can extract all of the frequency components of your log, amplitude and frequency. But of course you don't want to see noise in there. So I did a simple thresholding both on the amplitude side. Don't show me too small oscillations. It doesn't make sense to detect an oscillation in pitch of 0.1 degree. And don't show me too slow of an oscillation. And I think I put the threshold around a fifth of a hertz or something like that. Basically, don't show me transient responses. Don't show me their frequency. I want to see sustained oscillations. Another important aspect of the methodology is whether each run, if I run it multiple times with the same parameters, are they repeatable? Do I get the same metrics? Or is it just accidental data there? And it's quite good for stable flights. The x-axis, I know it's hard to read, but the x-axis in this case is from 9.2 seconds rise time, for example, to 9.5 seconds. So this is a pretty good group. Same for airspeed, undershoot and overshoot. We were expecting ideally straight lines here. And same for the climb rate. And since this is a stable tune, you see no oscillation on the top rows. For a not so stable tune, where we had, for example, the time constant was set to something small and the pitch response was set to very weak, we see oscillations recorded, which are also reasonably repeatable. Amplitudes in pitch from 6 to 10 degrees. The frequency is also quite well grouped. So that's a happy picture. For worse oscillations and for really unstable configurations, however, no, it's all over the place. The range in metrics is quite wide, which means that, yeah, this methodology doesn't do a very good job on assessing really unstable configurations. Maybe a point of improvement in the future, but then again, when you have a really dynamic and unstable system, you don't expect repeatable behavior anyway. So, yeah, I don't know what to tell you there. Any questions so far? Yeah, so again, this is only about airplanes flying as an airplane, like straight producing lift with their wings. And when I mean stable, I mean that it is flying on a constant airspeed and at a constant flight path angle, basically, constant pitch. It might be climbing, it might be descending, it might be flying straight, as long as its pitch and flight path angle is constant.
Okay, in a constant, consistent stage.
Sorry?
If I understand correctly, it has to be in a constant moving state.
Yeah, it's moving, but the airspeed and the flight path angle are as close to constant as possible. Whereas if it has a pronounced long-term period and dropping in altitude and gaining airspeed and vice versa, this is considered unstable or badly tuned, however you call it.
Thank you very much.
We have another question back.
Hi. So maybe I missed it, but are these just normal SQL simulations, or did you use something else?
This is the default vanilla CIDL of the plane.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. So, for the second part, some findings that I stumbled upon or I wanted to answer through this search. It's not exhaustive about TECs, it's not 100% conclusive about TECs. I just think it was interesting and I wanted to share it with you. So first of all, talking about the text time constant, which is probably the primary parameter that dictates the behavior of text. It's a parameter that says how fast or how slow should text act to regulate that airspeed and altitude. Let's see if I have notes here. I'm missing my notes. Okay. So as you can see and expect, we see that when the values are very low, 1 or 2, which are unreasonably small values to put on text time constant, we get oscillation and overshoot, for example, in airspeed, and very small rise time, yes, but also quite a bit of altitude overshoot. So this is a first indication that our methodology reflects our expectation a bit. But you also see that for this particular pitch tune of the vehicle, setting the text time constant more than the minimum value to guarantee stability doesn't really alter the behavior. Yes, it kind of makes for a more pronounced airspeed overshoot or undershoot, but not by a huge amount. Again, with a caveat that this refers to the default simulation model in the CIDL suite. So in your actual airplane, the minimum value of text time constant that needs to be put to make it stable will not be the same. It's not going to be 2, it's going to be something else. We're looking at the qualitative behavior of the graphs here, not the quantitative one. The next one is text HDEM time constant, which is how fast the altitude demand is going to rise. So when you click on the map, on guided mode, for example, and say, go here at 200 meters altitude while you are on 100 meters, usually you get a ramp-like increase in altitude, but there are also cases especially for small altitude increases or decreases, where the text is commanded to immediately change its altitude target. And this is how fast or how slow this is going to change. Basically, how much that altitude step gets curbed. And we see that increasing this parameter, this time constant, as we expect, it brings an increase in altitude rise time. That's good to see for step ups and step downs. It also decreases altitude overshoot because you climb more carefully to your final altitude. It also decreases airspeed overshoot as you make it greater. So in some cases, if you don't need that high of the climb rate performance, it's a good parameter to increase, get a less fast climbing or fast descending airplane, but a more stable one. You can overdo it though, as you can see that past some point, the climb rate error and the sink rate error start to increase as well. And we'll talk a bit more about them in the next slides. In the next section, I want to touch upon the pitch control influence on the text tuning. So text produces a pitch reference, a pitch command, that it expects to be carried out and served by the pitch control loop. But the pitch control loop isn't ideal. It might be loosely tuned, and this is an example of this is on the top figure, where the green line is the commanded pitch angle, and the blue line is the achieved pitch angle. It doesn't reach the commanded angle, and also takes a long time to reach its minimum value in this case. It takes 2 seconds. And in order to reproduce this, I think I reduced a lot the pitch to servo time constant. It is also possible to overdo it and overtune your pitch loop and cause instabilities, and this is the case of the second picture, where your green line is roughly around 0, but your response is swinging up and down a lot, and this is basically an unstable aircraft. It is kind of a given that an unstable aircraft in the pitch angle is not going to fly well anyways, but it's good to confirm it with the analysis as well. So, in the right, it's a case of a very weak pitch tune. On the left, it's the nominal case. So indeed, we see that we get looser pitch when we get a looser pitch regulation. Yes, as we expect, we see worse oscillations on the airspeed regulation as well. We see worse oscillations in the climb rate. We do not climb as steadily as in the nominal case. And there is also, of course, more oscillation on the pitch reference itself, which doesn't help us anyways. Yes, and the metrics show the same story, more or less. This is a sweep of the pitch to servo time constant. And yes, we see that when we make this value bigger, which means we intentionally make the pitch control more loose, more weak, we start seeing after some point oscillations in the pitch command, in the airspeed command, and there's more altitude overshoot and worse behavior in general. This particular feature here, it's a quirk of the metrics where the rise time doesn't actually reduce. It's that the sweep is so wild, the uncontrollability of the pitch angle is so wide, is so big that the plane shoots up above the target altitude, completely out of control, and the metrics think, okay, I've reached my altitude, yes, but in a very uncontrollable method. So it's not really a reduction of rise time. The next parameter I want to talk about is the TECs integral gain. This is a parameter that says how much various integrators on airspeed and altitude wind up to help your pitch angle and your throttle match your reference and close down airspeed and altitude errors. And let's see. You do need, the story here is that this needs to be a non-zero value. If you set this value to 0, there is no more mechanism to close down the airspeed errors and the altitude errors. And you see here that there is 500 meters worth of altitude error, and the airspeed undershoot is 10 meters, or yeah, it's really not good control. You do need some minimum value on TECs integral gain. But you can also overdo it, and again, for the default Sittl plane, after the value of approximately 1, you start getting oscillations on pitch because the contribution of TECs integral gain becomes unstable. Next, about text pitch damp. And this one, at least to my interpretation of the code and the dynamics, although it says damp in its name, it acts more like a proportional gain on the pitch angle. There are other mechanisms to regulate the pitch angle. There's a feed-forward term, which is usually not fast enough. There are some integrators, but they are also slow, like pitch intergain, as we said before. So text pitch damp can help you increase the dynamics of your pitch and get you a more tight exchange of energy between airspeed and altitude. But again, you can overdo it. If you put text pitch damp too high, you get oscillations again and really bad climb rate error. Unfortunately for the default simulation model, the beneficial effect of text pitch damp isn't very visible. There is no value here where it improves things. It can only make things worse. So in the future, I'd like to find a better example, essentially, a combination of parameters, physical parameters of a vehicle that show how text pitch damp helps you more in practice, more in visible terms. And this brings us to a point where we often get questions about my plane doesn't perform well. It climbs, it loses altitude, it varies in airspeed, throttle doesn't work right. Is it a throttle issue? Is it a pitch issue? Well, usually it's a bit of both because both systems have some spillover between them. In theory, the guidelines say that if there's something with your pitch regulation, then you will see a lot of energy exchange between your airspeed and your altitude. Essentially, you will get a lot of airspeed, lose altitude, and then trade back this energy, gain altitude, lose airspeed, and vice versa. Whereas if there's something wrong with your throttle, you will see that both of these states, energy and altitude, will increase and decrease at the same time. But this is not enough of a lead most of the time in my experience. For example, if you issue an altitude rise demand, as in a constant climb change, both the throttle and the pitch need to rise by definition. And if you get oscillations and bad behavior there, it's not clear what is at fault there. So there is some logging that can help us try to identify issues. And there are logged messages that help us reconstruct the throttle signal and the pitch signal. And we can see which one of those components, we can try to find a component that is swinging the wildest or is producing the most oscillation. So in this case, from this particular log, we can see that we see oscillation and the throttle doesn't oscillate as much, but we get a lot of variations suddenly on the pitch demand sources. And perhaps we can try to trace this one level to the back as well and try to see what does our energy and our energy balance do. And in this case, we can see that the energy balance rate request was not served right. It was swinging and overshooting wildly on this step response. So in this case, we see that something is wrong with our energy balance rate, so probably there's something wrong with our pitch regulation. And indeed, this was the case where I had set the pitch tuning to be very weak. So this is a framework to think about text issues, but again, there's a lot of coupling, unfortunately, and there are no hard and fast answers, at least to my experience so far. Another note about max climb and max sync performance. You get oftentimes when you have gone through the TECs calibration guides who say that please fly in FPWA at max throttle at your cruise airspeed and record your pitch angle, maximum, minimum, etc., etc. But you still get this behavior where your pitch angle reaches its maximum and then dips and then climbs again, dips and climbs again, or under your maximum pitch. This is a signal that and this can happen as well even below your maximum pitch angle. And the reason this happens is that TECs will ease off the stick in a sense. It will stop climbing as fast or sinking as fast when either of two conditions are true. Either it's expecting to exceed its maximum pitch angle, or it is actually exceeding and reaching the maximum throttle. In most situations, you have the case where the throttle is not at maximum yet, but your pitch angle is close to maximum. And in these cases, it means that it's the pitch angle that is triggering this ease off. And in this case, you can increase the pitch max of your vehicle, or if your TECs limit is a bit lower, TECs pitch max, I think is the parameter name, you can raise them a bit without penalty. It's not critical that they are exactly at where you want them to be for this climb. They can be a bit higher. But the TECs will never do a climb at maximum throttle. Even though the original algorithm back from the 80s was designed to do this, our current implementation will not allow it. The best you can do is to try to climb with 90-ish% throttle for a normal cruise. For cases like takeoff and stall, yes, it will try to put maximum energy, but in a normal flight, it will never climb at 100% throttle. And after this investigation, I'm kind of getting ideas on whether it's safe to bring this back and under what conditions we can try to achieve this. Because for some people, achieving the maximum possible climb rate is important. TECs throttle damp is another parameter that is often considered for tuning. In this simulation model, again, it didn't have much of an effect, of a beneficial effect, at least. Even at zero, the plane flies fine. But at least we can see, even in the simulation, the damping effect of TECs throttle damp. As we increase its value up to 5 or more, we get increased altitude rise times, increased altitude overshoots. It smooths things out, but also makes them slower, so you get less of a crisp response in terms of altitude. And finally, some miscellaneous points. TECs height omega. This by default does not have any effect, because if the EKF is active and can give a vertical speed reading, then TECs height omega doesn't apply, it is not taken into consideration. So for most users, most modern users, it doesn't matter. However, TECs speed omega is used and should not be set to 0. If you set it to 0, you basically have no point of reference for your airspeed. Your airspeed sensor is not going to be used, and only your accelerometer, for better or worse, is going to inform the development of the airspeed. So don't set it to 0. By default, it's going to fly fine. Yeah, thank you. So future work, at least for me, is tried to improve the scripts a bit more to give the opportunity to run every simulation multiple times, and instead of plotting a single line, plot a confidence interval of this graph, which will inform whether each graph is telling a consistent story or it's just random noise. And as I said before, try to have a way where you can try this in more vehicles, more simulation models, tweak their parameters, try to bring out more bad behaviors, and try to find cases where some parameters indeed prove a lot more beneficial than in the default case. To leave you off, all of those graphs you saw before, such as this one and this one, are made with Plot Juggler. It's a plotting tool, and my layout can be found in the first link up there. You can load the log, load my layout, and get those graphs. And I also maintain a Draw.io set of diagrams where I try to make abstracts of ArduPilot controllers and other relations. And I have also tried to make an abstract of the TECs controller, and you can find this in the second link. So, thanks for your attention. I am interested to hear your experiences about TECs, and some of you have already approached me. If you want, come find me after that. And if you have TECs-related issues, send me the log, let me know. I'm all for gathering more data and helping me inform my future advice. So yeah, thank you. If we have time for questions, Matt?
Okay, we have time for one question.
Yeah.
Of course, you know that I'm very interested in the climb rate, and trying to read between the lines. There's a lot of data here, but so I think you started out by saying the text time constant is the most influential text parameter, but you also mentioned that text HDEM-tconst is important for the climb rate. So it seemed a little bit to me like looking at increasing both of those parameters might help with improving the climb rate, on vehicles where climb is important.
Yes, it depends on whether your oscillation, for example, is due to abrupt change of altitude, or if this oscillation persists even through steady state.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not concerned about oscillation. I'm concerned about achieving the maximum achievable climb rate.
In this case, the more relevant discussion is the slide where I was talking about the max climb rate and in which conditions the text will ease off the stick and try to climb more slowly, where you have the maximum climb rate condition. And as I said, text will never try to climb at 100% throttle. So if this is something you expect it to do, it will never do this for you right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for a question from Trade as well.
Okay.
Thanks for the great talk, George. One thing that the long-term aim we've had with TECs for quite a while has been to get a TECs auto-tuner going. With your exploration of the parameters and sensitivity, have you had any ideas along the lines of an approach for automatic text tuning?
It has crossed my mind. So I was talking yesterday with Nathan about one of the last GSOC projects we had, where there was reinforcement learning around tuning the text parameters. That could be one approach. Another more easy approach, perhaps, because users are still struggling with it, is to automate the text limits maneuvers to the text maneuvers that we have to do to find the aircraft limits, climb rate, maximum pitch angle, etc. But these, for us, we know what we have to do to get these, but other users, it's not as easy for them. But tuning the stability parameters, it's a different question. I think I could get to a state where we could inform we could have an informed order of tuning parameters, like we do for our PAD gains, for example, where we usually start with a P, then with the I, then with a D. I would like to get to a point where we know the order of parameters to tune for TECs. But so far, no, I don't have something like that. One idea is if we can do an adequately good job of linearization of the text controller, at least for the trim case, then we could do the equivalent of system identification, like we do for Copter, and then use the linear model of text to get a crisp and oscillation-free response with the equivalent tuning of parameters without even a simulation, just on paper. Yeah. Thank you for the question.